So what you're not gonna do is play with my hometown. Hey everyone, this is D Movieman, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. And yes, once again, I am here to give my out of the theater, in the theater thoughts on the upcoming release, Drop! Directed by Christopher Landon and starring Meghann Fahy, Brandon Sklenar, Violett, Beane, and many, many more. Story-wise, this film is centered around a widowed single mother who, during her first date in many, many years, finds her experience completely disrupted when a mysterious stranger begins to drop her some extremely threatening and disturbing messages. So, I'm going to start with the pros, and naturally, I'm going to start with our director. Christopher Landon is a director I'm very familiar with. He's previously written and directed the films Paranormal Activity, the marked ones, Happy Death Day to You, Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse, Freaky, and We Have a Ghost. I have enjoyed, if nothing else, I have absolutely enjoyed Happy Death Day and its sequel. I know the sequel wasn't really necessary, but I still enjoyed it nonetheless. And both those films end up being very pleasant surprises, especially that first film, because even when I saw Happy Death Day, it was really only because I had missed showing for Professor Marston and the Wonder Woman, so I was just like, oh Lord, I guess I'll go see this, and I'm glad I did. You know, things worked out the way they were supposed to, but I think he has a very interesting style as far as his direction, his blending of horror and comedy, and I know that can be a very dicey thing, but I think he does manage to make it work for his films. And I will say, for the most part, I did appreciate a lot of his direction here. And it's funny because I also found out that he was the writer for Hard Eyes, which makes a lot of sense because we have a similar dynamic. We have, this blind date situation. We have this mysterious, killer assailant in the background. And then these two people who aren't sure of each other, like, are you the person? Am I the person? What's really going on? I'm kind of feeling you, but you might be trying to take me out. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely saw that here. And so when I found out he was the writer, it definitely made sense to me. I've already discussed Meghann Fahy before. Naturally, I was introduced to her in The White Lotus. And she also popped up in Your Monster. I mentioned that, I believe, in my full review for Your Monster. And I do think that as the lead, she is a big part of what makes this work for as long as it does. Because, she's having to pull from a very, emotional, vulnerable place and keeping the tension, the suspense, all of that going. And I have to say, I think for the most part, pretty much all of it, she does a really solid job making all that work. And I have to say that, because you already know I love an ensemble cast, I think the ensemble cast and supporting characters and supporting performances, I did think all of that was fairly enjoyable. I think everyone as a part of this dynamic that's happening and the whodunit and just trying to figure out and unravel the mystery behind it all, I think everyone did a great job just kind of keeping you guessing and, just adding to this environment, this very swanky upscale restaurant, which I love. And from that standpoint, I have to say, considering that this restaurant was made on a set, I really love the production values. I really love the set design, all of that. Listen, that's my scene. That's my vibe. Okay, and I love a good restaurant with aesthetics like that. And I can eat anywhere, but I ain't mad at a little upscale. Okay, I will never be upset at that. So I really did enjoy that. I think it was just a very impressively designed set. I do have to say though, out of all the ensemble cast and supporting characters, Jeffery self was absolutely the standout. 100%. Lord, his character, which ends up being, let's just say, this very new waiter at the restaurant, he definitely stole the show. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I'm gonna let you know right now, it couldn't be me. Okay? He could not be the one at my table because let's just say we would not end up best friends in that situation, because absolutely not. and I'm trying to eat and get, yeah, I'm not gonna spoil it, but when you see it, you're gonna know what I'm talking about. And overall, I think this does have a very obvious Hitchcockian theme to it, and I always love that. I'm always here for anything Hitchcock, and in the same vein as Black Bag, which, ironically enough, is literally right here. Yes. So clearly I love a cat and mouse game. I love a situation where it's keeping us guessing, and it's just like, how is this going to unfold? And I will say, after a certain point, I was just like, how? Because I was just like, I know this has to conclude in some way, but for a while, I was just kind of like, I don't know what kind of situation you got yourself into, but I do not envy you, because the stuff that was going down, I was not prepared. So I can definitely say, from the suspense and thrills part of it, it was absolutely there. The tension, all of it, I was just like, I'm stressed out. All right, now I'm gonna jump over to the cons, and let me make something very clear. I feel like I've said it a lot, but I'm always willing to say it again, okay? Chi-Town is the hometown, and the hometown is the what? Best town. You're not going to play games with my city, okay? I said that at the beginning, and I'm circling back around to it now. This entire production was filmed in Dublin, Ireland. Now, I understand that there may be reasons as to why you don't film in America, you don't film in a certain state, there might be tax incentives and breaks and all that kind of stuff, and that's fine. However, trying to play games by telling me this is Chicago, absolutely not. I will not take the disrespect. Here's the thing. If you want us to believe it's Chicago, at least make an effort to make this city even remotely look like Chicago. Because as soon as I saw it, I was like, I wonder what city this is, because it looked very unique. And so usually, if I don't have even a kind of basic awareness, just something about the architecture, I was just like, this is either overseas or it's in Canada. I can always kind of tell. And so when I found out it was filmed in Ireland, I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. But I just don't understand why this just couldn't have been Dublin, Ireland. Is there something wrong with having a film that's set in Dublin? I just thought it was so bizarre to have this set in Chicago when there is literally nothing to suggest that it's Chicago other than a few references and a really, really poorly designed backdrop of the skyline, which doesn't even look like Chicago. So I was just like, there was no point. Like, if you're not going to do my city justice, then y'all can keep it. I'm talking My Best Friend's Wedding, Home Alone, The Dark Knight, and the list goes on, okay? If you're going to film in my city, you need to bring it. Or at the very least, represent the city well. And I don't feel like this film did that at all. And I was offended and I was baffled. I also have to say that as enjoyable as this film is, man, that third act, and it's always tough, it's always rough when a film is going well and then it just fumbles at the very end. And I don't think it completely destroys it as a film, but it absolutely is nowhere near what came before it. It becomes very like, oh, okay, so we're doing this. I just feel like the whole point of the tone and the vibe of the film is Hitchcockian, right? Which is fine. You can branch out of that at some point and kind of, amp things up if you must. But I just felt like as soon as there's a certain reveal at the end or towards the end of the film, it turns into something completely like overblown and over the top. And I was just like, I'm not feeling this. It's just like all of a sudden the vibe and the tone of it just felt very goofy to me. And I was just like, why are we doing this? Why? It very much, and I know I said this in another review, I cannot remember which one it was, but it absolutely reminds me of the film Red Eye from 2005. It's like the the crux or the entirety of that film takes place on this plane in this very messed up situation with a person who is an obvious antagonist, and you are stuck on a plane late at night, and you are having to contend with this happening in a place where there are no exits. Like, where are you gonna go? And I felt like as long as the film remained there, it was so solid. As soon as they touched down and a certain something happened, and we got this whole massive chase sequence, I was like, this does not flow or go well with what came before. I get that we have to like have a super splashy finale, but it just did not work for me at all. And that's the same thing here. It just felt like once that happened, it was just like, no, like the tone and the vibe is off. It's just like, you know, it just became, and it was very obvious how the film was going to end, considering how the film opened. So even though I appreciate the message, I just felt like it could have said so much more, or at least found a way to close things out in some way that still felt like it was keeping with that same tone and vibe that we established early on. Because it's just like, all that at that point was just like, why? We could have kept this. So when it comes down to it, I think Drop is fairly enjoyable. I do think it's, you know, it's tension filled, it's suspense, it's thrills, it's all of that. And I think it's a film that people will most likely enjoy. And I do think that Christopher Landon and his lane as far as direction and, you know, the type of stories that he is crafting, I am interested in that. However, I do think that just where we go at the end is just not it for me. So yeah, like I said, this was fine. I would say without that whole third act, this probably would have been like in the B- range. With the third act, however, I would say this is like probably like right at a C for me. Not bad, you know, not a terrible experience, but did it fall short of bringing everything together as a cohesive film in an entertaining and effective way from beginning to finish? Not quite. So, once again, this is D, Movieman, signing off, and I'll see you at the movies.